This is a test for Cabinet Member Decision. This isn't Decision Day. This is the test for Licensing Subcommittee.
morning. Can I please welcome everyone to this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee taking place from the Walton Suite, Winchester Guildhall. The time is 10 o'clock. My name is Councillor Brian Laming, one of the subcommittee members of this particular licensing committee. The opening parts of this meeting are being live streamed and recorded to the Council's YouTube channel. Subtitles are available and advice how to turn this on set out on their website. And everybody, please ensure that your mobiles are on silent. In the unlikely event that it is necessary to evacuate the building, the fire alarm will sound. Please follow all the instructions given to you by our team. Now moving on to the agenda, to confirm the chairperson for the meeting. Agreed. Thank you. Do we have any disclosures of interest? We have the application for the special private hire vehicle licence report, LR 575. I'd like to introduce myself then as Brian Laming, Chairman. We have the officers.
Claire Humphreys, Licensing Officer.
Charles Stephenshire, Licensing Manager.
And it's Daniel Lucas, Senior Planning and Litigation Lawyer in the legal team.
Claire Buchanan, Democratic Services Officer, minuting the meeting.
And my fellow committee is
Councillor Michael Cairn.
Councillor Patrick Cunningham.
Thank you. We have the licensing manager's report, please.
So, good morning, everybody. This report relates to an application that has been received from Mr. Roger Walker to license an electric tuk-tuk as a special private hire vehicle. Mr. Walker proposes to provide a pre-bookable service for weddings, special events and short journeys in and around Winchester. Mr. Walker is looking to operate during the summer months initially, when the weather is more favourable, and the fare for all journeys will be set by the operator when the booking is made. The tuk-tuk is a three-seater vehicle with motorbike steering, which is classed as a tricycle for MOT purposes by the DVLA. The tuk-tuk is electric powered for approximately 50 miles and has a maximum speed of 20 miles per hour. The vehicle specification can be found at Appendix 3 to this report. Mr. Walker has not committed as yet to purchasing a tuk-tuk. This will be dependent on the subcommittee's decision today. Tuk-tuk will be purchased through an independent supplier and will meet UK requirements. A tricycle must use the Motor Single Vehicle Approval Scheme to approve the vehicle through the DVLA before a V5 registration document is issued. The standard Hackney carriage and or private hire vehicle conditions have been amended as applicable to this application and vehicle type, which, if granted, would be attached to the special private hire vehicle tuk-tuk licence. These can be found at Appendix 4 of this report. The subcommittee are asked to amend and or approve these conditions if they decide to depart from the policy and delegate to the licensing manager or an authorised officer to grant the licence. Special conditions approved by the subcommittee shall be attached to the licence and kept separate from the usual licensing of private hire vehicles and drivers. In previous years, the safety of rickshaws and tuk-tuks have been questioned nationally by the media. The subcommittee must consider whether this form of transport will provide any serious risk to fare-paying passengers. The safety of passengers carried in licensed vehicles is paramount. To license a tuk-tuk as a special private hire vehicle would allow the council to ensure that the vehicles used are safe, clean and tidy. Within the report, we are asking the subcommittee to depart from the current policy in relation to the following two paragraphs. Paragraph 3.4 of the policy requires all vehicles, when licensed for the first time, to display permanently fixed approved Winchester City Council door signs on both sides of the vehicle on the front doors. The tuk-tuk would be easily identified and has insufficient space to display the current approved door signs due to the size of the sign. Paragraph 3.12 of the policy requires all vehicles to have at least 4 doors. The tuk-tuk has only 2 doors. Mr. Walker has also requested that the minimum age for passengers travelling in a tuk-tuk be 15 years old to allow him to transport students attending prom nights or similar events. With regards to applying for a private hire driver licence, Mr. Walker does not intend to submit an application for a new private hire driver's licence until a decision has been made with regards to his application to licence a special private hire vehicle. Should the subcommittee decide to depart from the policy and delegate to the licensing manager or authorised officer to grant Mr. Walker's application for a special private hire driver licence, they should review the conditions as set out in Appendix 5 to be agreed in principle. These conditions would be attached to any private hire driver's licence where the applicant will be driving the special private hire vehicle tuk-tuk. Finally, should the subcommittee decide to depart from the policy and delegate to the licensing manager or authorised officer to grant Mr. Walker's application for a special private hire vehicle licence tuk-tuk, Mr. Walker intends to apply for the grant of a private hire operator licence. If granted, the private hire operator licence conditions will be attached as standard. There are no current operating conditions which would not apply to Mr. Walker's business. The options set out for the subcommittee to consider relating to the licensing of a special private hire vehicle tuk-tuk are: 1. That the subcommittee depart from the statement of licensing policy with respect to hackney carriage and private hire vehicles, drivers and private hire operators, which we refer to as the policy, and delegate to the licensing manager or an authorised officer to grant a special private hire licence tuk-tuk, subject to usual checks, to Mr. Roger Walker for 12 months with special conditions which can be found at Appendix 4, approved by the subcommittee. Or 2, that the subcommittee depart from the policy and delegate to the licensing manager or an authorised officer to grant a special private hire licence tuk-tuk, again subject to the usual checks, to Mr. Roger Walker for 6 months, with special conditions which can be found at Appendix 4, approved by the subcommittee. If after 6 months there are no concerns, the licence shall be extended for a further 6 months, so 12 months in total, without any additional application or fee required. Or 3, that the subcommittee refuse the application to licence a tuk-tuk as a private hire vehicle. And in addition, 4, that the subcommittee grant in principle a special private hire driver licence tuk-tuk with special conditions found at Appendix 5, approved by the subcommittee. Just to bring to your attention, on page 11 of the report pack, you will see 12.18. There are a couple of errors. It should say, should the subcommittee decide to grant Mr. Walker's application for a special private hire, it should say driver, not vehicle, licence tuk-tuk. And the conditions as set out in appendix, it should say 5, not 4. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions?
Sorry, please bear with me. I've got a couple of questions.
Yes, absolutely fine.
If you look on page 9, the proposed vehicle 12.3, tuk-tuk is a 3-seater vehicle.
So page 9.
Page 9, 12.3.
Oh, 12.3. Yeah.
0.3, sorry. The tuk-tuk is a 3-seater vehicle, yeah? So that therefore means 2 passengers and 1 driver.
That's exactly right. Yes.
On page 14, in the application from Mr. Walker, it also says number of passengers 2. That confirms it's a 2-seater plus a driver.
That's two passengers and
Plus driver.
1 driver, making it would be a total of 3.
Yeah.
including the driver.
That's correct. That
Thank you.
confirms the first point. On page 17, in the application, further information, supplementary information, paragraph 4. This application is for private hire license for an electric tuk-tuk to be used around which to carry 2 passengers. So that's 3 times we've got up to 2 passengers and 1 driver, yeah?
That's correct.
1 bench seat behind the driver with laptop belts fitted for 2 passengers. So again, it's all to do with 2 passengers and 1 driver.
That's right.
On the appendix 3, Mike.
On appendix 3, page 22. Seating capacities are driver plus 3-seaters, driver plus 3-seater, driver plus 4-seater, driver plus 4-seater. And then on page 23 is the big problem. Where I need clarification. Private hire vehicle means a motor vehicle constructed or adapted to seat fewer than 9 passengers in terms of the private hire vehicle conditions applied to this tuk-tuk, which means there can be up to 8 passengers. Am I right?
For a standard private hire vehicle, that's correct.
But this is
For this private hire special vehicle licence tuk-tuk, it would be 2 passengers and 1 driver.
but why are we saying that there could be up to 9 in both appendix 4 and appendix 5? Can be adapted to seat fewer than 9, so up to 8 passengers.
If I can assist, Chair, by law, a private hire vehicle carry no more than 9 passengers. So the clarification at the start of this, and bear in mind we're amending a standard set of conditions. So
So why
you
not
take
that
out-
amended?
yeah, so what we need to check is whether if there's no reference within the rest of the document to standard private hire vehicle, that could be removed. And if you're happy, Chair, I can do that whilst you're continuing with the meeting.
Please, thank you.
In terms of the clarification of the number of passengers, that might be a question that you'd ask to the applicant later into the meeting.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Carol.
That's it. No? Yes, I've got a question. On page 36, we're talking about carrying of animals. Now, I presume that if we had disabled passengers with a requirement for a guide dog, how do we cover that? Because they have to be secure in the vehicle.
The requirement to carry an assistance dog applies to licensed vehicles, but I think trying to recall whether that's we must have had that conversation when we went through the conditions when we met Roger. But I can't for the life of me at this point remember what it might be worth, if you're happy, Chair,
Yeah,
for
of
Mr.
course.
Walker to answer that question at this point. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We did have that discussion about dogs. I don't particularly have a view on it, and I think the discussion ended on more on a point of law, whether I, as the operator, was able to refuse somebody with a dog. If I'm 100% honest, I don't think it's a particularly appropriate vehicle to carry an assistance dog, but I'd be led by the room as to whether I was able to discriminate in that way. And so if somebody asked and said, I want to bring my assistant dog, whether I'd be able to say, look, technically, yes, but I don't think it's appropriate. And I think that was kind of where we ended up.
If I recall correctly, it might have been a conversation that we said that actually it would be to the customer when they contact, that they'd be well aware, or certainly aware in from the beginning about what type of vehicle they'd be looking to hire anyway.
Yeah.
And then that would be a discussion that Mr. Walker could have with them, whether they think it's acceptable and safe. I think ultimately assistance dogs are so well trained, they're so well behaved when you compare them to a normal pet dog. But I think it would probably be something that would be at the risk of the customer and their decision whether they want to be in that type of vehicle.
Yeah.
Whether that's
Well,
likely
they-
to happen very often, but I think that would be a conversation for
Yeah.
Mr Walker as the operator to discuss
That's
that
what
with
makes
the
them
individual themselves, yeah. Because there isn't proper, I mean, they're called doors, and funnily enough, at the beginning, Claire and I said, well, you know, where are the doors? And then when you actually look at the picture, there's doors of sorts for that type of vehicle. It's not obviously a standard vehicle as you'd expect with the usual private hire, hence why we're here today.
The question really boils down to the fact that if you do have a dog on board or any other animal, they must be securely fixed to the vehicle. So we need to be assured of that, because otherwise,
A dog could be, I mean, there's plenty of framework in the vehicle for the dog to be attached,
Yeah.
in inverted commas, securely.
yeah,
But clearly the doors are, as suggested, are not full height doors, so you know there's the potential for the dog to jump out. I mean, if you felt it appropriate, I would say, unfortunately, we're unable to carry passengers with assistance dogs, but I'm not sure whether that's legal. I'll refer to our.
Chair, I can help you out a bit. Assist. So under the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act, and indeed the Equality Act 2010. So the Equality Act creates what's known as the Public Sector Equality Duty. And in relation to assistance dogs, the actual 2010 Act, the Equality Act, says at section 170, assistance dogs in private hire vehicles, which this will be, it won't be a hackney. The operator of a private hire vehicle commits an offence by failing or refusing to accept a booking for the vehicle if the booking is requested by or on behalf of a disabled person or a person who wishes to be accompanied by a disabled person, and the reason for the failure or refusal to take the booking is that the disabled person will be accompanied by an assistance dog. So quite clearly it creates a situation where if someone calls up in advance and says, I'm blind, I have an assistance dog, if the operator of the vehicle says, I'm not prepared to take the booking because of said dog, it's a criminal offence. So the duty is clearly on the operator, on the applicant here, and not on the council.
Yeah.
So it will be a matter of criminal law if a said booking was to be refused simply because an individual wanted to be accompanied by an assistance dog. Now, I don't know about the vehicle, its parameters. If it could carry a dog, you might want to explore how safe it would be. If the dog could have a lap out, that's matter for you on the facts. But in terms of the law, it is a criminal offence to refuse solely because of that dog.
and I was also under the impression that the point of law was that any dog in a car must be able to be restrained in a suitable manner.
You're testing me now about whether or not a dog should be restrained in a general vehicle. I don't know, but I'm here to advise you about whether or not in a private hire vehicle, the driver commits an offence if they refuse to take a dog.
Yeah.
And they will commit an offence. So by implication, it must be able to take a dog. Otherwise, the applicant's in the position of being in the criminal territory.
Carol, you said earlier on that the person who was hiring it, if he had an assistant plus an assistant's dog, were we in the situation of that?
If the vehicle is only licensed to carry 2 passengers, and there wouldn't, on safety grounds, you wouldn't be able to fit 2 adults and an assistance dog, that would be something obviously that Mr Walker would need to set out to the proposed customer. What might be useful is the in terms of dogs being securely restrained, is that the right word? Sorry, I had a bit of a mind block there. In vehicles, I'm aware that applies to pets. Whether that applies to assistance dogs in licensed vehicles, we will need to have a look. As you're aware, there are other pieces of legislation which apply to standard vehicles which don't apply to licensed vehicles, such as child seats for children. There are guidance that children of a certain age shouldn't sit in the front, and of a certain age they just sit on the adult's lap. They wouldn't need to provide car seats. So whether there is an implication there that because it's a licensed vehicle, they may not have to restrain dogs safely.
Yeah.
However, I say may, I don't know for sure,
Yeah.
but that's something I can try and find out now while we're at the hearing.
That was just that I'm concerned this is the first.
Certainly, I've not
Well,
become
this
aware
time,
of it in my
yeah.
time here, in that the safety, securing dogs in a pet dog, since that's come, I mean, that's been in the last few years, hasn't it? I say few years, it's probably been like 6, 7, 8 years now. But that's certainly never come our way in terms of passing anything on for licensed vehicles, which can take pets, but certainly not been a knock on pet assistance dogs. I don't know if Daniel's seen anything.
So Chairman, through you, members, so there's general duties. What I've talked about previously was you asked about assistance dogs.
Yeah.
There are provisions, as I've just explained, for assistance dogs. There are also general duties placed upon private hire vehicle drivers, not operators, but drivers, in relation to their overarching obligations towards disabled passengers. It's quite lengthy, and again, the Equality Act makes detailed provisions about this, section 164A. This section imposes duties on the driver of a taxi or private hire vehicle which has been hired by or for a disabled person, or B, by another person who wishes to be accompanied by a disabled person. So you've got a situation there of two.
Yes.
So that would seem to be okay with the operating model and the tuk-tuk here. The issue is 2+ dog. That's going to make it a little bit tricky, and it might well be that the driver should take detailed notes of the conversation, the pre-booking, as to how that could be negotiated, because you can take 2, as this general duty said. 2+ dog might be awkward. It goes on to say this section also imposes duties on the driver of a taxi or private hire vehicle if the vehicle is being used to provide certain services under the Transport Act. But this section does not impose duties on a driver in a case of which the disabled person is in a wheelchair. And paragraph 8 deals with what we call WAVs, wheelchair accessible vehicles, which this shall not be. And it goes on, the general duties are to carry the passenger. If the passenger is in or has with them a wheelchair, to carry the wheelchair. This won't be a WAV, so that's struck. If the passenger has with them any mobility aids, to carry said mobility aids, to take such steps as are reasonable to ensure that the passenger is carried in safety and reasonable comfort, to give the passenger such mobility assistance as is reasonably required, and not to make or propose to make any additional charge for complying with the above duties. So you can't charge obviously extra to fulfill those functions. So there is a general duty on the driver, as well as making criminal sanctions for not carrying a dog if requested. I think the operating model probably could capture it. It's the issue of 2+ dog. It would need clever sort of conversations with the proposed hirer, shall we say, to make that clear that we can take an assistor, but not an assistor plus a dog.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can just add in, obviously, is there any kind of anything in the legislation? Because obviously this is a tricycle. Obviously, when you look at different vehicles, you've got motorbikes that people can hire with a private hire. You've then got cars, vans, minibuses. They're all obviously different capabilities. Is there anything in the legislation that accounts for the fact that this is a tricycle? So actually potentially wanting to take an assistance dog on a tricycle isn't necessarily something that's a feasible option, or is it just a blanket bit of legislation, or is there, because if you had an assistance dog, you wouldn't necessarily take it on a motorbike vehicle?
So as explained, if I just go through those concepts again, section 164A, the section imposes duties on the driver of a taxi or private hire vehicle. So by your grant and delegating to the officers to grant subject to checks, you're saying this is a private hire vehicle. You made that decision.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Any further? Mr. Walker, would you like to ask any questions at this point?
Well, I'd just like to thank you for this opportunity, and sorry to just sort of throw a bit of a curveball at you. I appreciate this isn't the kind of thing that you discuss every morning. I just would like to say that this vehicle is electric. I think we should all be working towards the greener methods of transport. It travels at a reasonable speed, but not at a fast speed. It's not going to be buzzing about. Unfortunately, I think there's a perception, and many of us have been to Thailand and Bangkok, and we've seen these vehicles sort of four abreast going down a dual carriageway, causing absolute chaos. I promise I won't be doing that. And at this stage, it would just be, you'd be looking for me as a driver on one vehicle. Obviously, if things go well, I'd come back to you and make further applications. But I think it's appropriate for the area that we live in, and I think it's a thing that would be good for the environment and fun for the area. I think it would be provide some a good method of transport for people who are bothered about the environment, and I think it would be a fun way for people to get about. And I appreciate your issues with safety. It's not a standard vehicle, but it is. I've had one of these, not an electric one, but I've had two petrol ones, which I've driven around Winchester for a good number of years. I don't have one at the moment, but they are safe. They're fully compliant. They're fitted with seat belts, lights, wipers. So I think the only issue is it's three-wheeler, I guess, for you guys, and that it's unfortunately inherently not quite as safe, and I'm the first to admit that, as a Mercedes 4x4 vehicle. But people ride about on e-bikes, on scooters, on bicycles, all sorts of things around the Hampshire Winchester roads. So it's certainly safer than that. It provides a level of protection for customers. So.
Okay. You got any questions?
Yes, your intention was to purchase a two-seater plus one driver, is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. Sorry, they go off. Yeah, you did refer, sorry, to page 22. That is a technical specification from Trio, who are the company that build these tuk-tuks, which I would purchase, has been said, from an importer in Eastleigh that's been importing for about 10 years. And actually, I refer you actually to the second column there. So it's the Trio HRT, which is the hardtop version, which actually says D in the second line down. Seating capacity says D plus 3-seater. We have to remember that these vehicles are designed for use in India, in Thailand. To be honest, they wouldn't hesitate putting 5 people in the back, let alone the 2 people. But obviously the license that I'm asking for, I think there's plenty of room for 2. We could argue, coming back to the discussion about passengers and dogs, that there might well be room actually for 2 passengers and a dog, but we won't go off. I think that's a topic we need to all talk around. And really, that I think the vehicles are appropriate. The space in the back is appropriate for 2 adults, or an adult and a child, or an adult and a dog, really. But that answers your question, hopefully, because I think the columns 3 and 4 are different vehicles. So they make this is a short wheelbase version of this vehicle, and it's basically the one in the picture that you see there. So you can see the bench seat across the back. So I sit in the front to drive it, and the 2 passengers sit in the back. So it would definitely be 1 driver and 2 passengers, or up to 2 passengers.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed for clarification.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I just had a very just quick clarification point. Obviously you mentioned the seat belts on the safety thing. On the specification, it says grab handles and bits and pieces. So are the seat belts, they're not listed in that specification, but are they standard, or are they added on?
No, again, they are added on in the UK. Unfortunately, again, in India, they don't see seatbelts as particularly important. And again, because they carry a lot more than 2 passengers, you'd end up with probably 6 seatbelts across the back. So no, they are retrofitted by my supplier in Eastleigh. But as has been said already, you know, his job is to make these vehicles compliant to UK specification, and you can't get a V5. We can't get a V5 for the vehicle unless it complies totally with the specification. And you know, obviously it has an MOT like other vehicles. It is classed as a tricycle, as has been pointed out, which is slightly different to a four-wheeled vehicle. So it has to go off. There actually aren't many MOT stations that have a license to MOT three-wheeler vehicles, tricycles. There were a couple in the county, so it gets retrofitted. It then goes to the MOT station and is fully checked. And at that point, the DVLC, whatever they're called these days, issue the V5 for it.
Okay. One other question that was brought to my notice over the weekend was that one of the complaints I have about these in London is excessive music noise from them.
We did, if I remember correctly, touch on music when I had a meeting with these guys recently. At this stage, the whole point of me bringing one of these to the roads is so people can go out, travel a little slower, and really take in the environment. And we'd be aiming to use sort of side roads wherever possible, because I think that's part of the whole experience. My aim, and when I've carried not fare paying passengers but friends and things in the back of my other vehicles, is it's quiet enough, certainly the electric one, to have a conversation. And part of the service that I would offer as a Hampshire resident would be pointing out things as we go along. So the aim would not be to play music at all. It doesn't come fitted with any kind of stereo, and if you felt that you wanted to add that as a condition that music wasn't played, I'd be very happy with that, and very happy to chat to my customers on board. And if I'm not in the vehicle on my own traveling back from a job, I'm very happy to just enjoy the sounds of nature rather than music blasting out.
Thank you. Would you like to ask any further questions? Would you like to sum up then, please?
Thank you. So in summing up, the options set out for the subcommittee to consider relating to the licensing of a special private hire vehicle tuk-tuk are: 1, that the subcommittee depart from the statement of licensing policy with respect to hackney carriage and private hire vehicles, drivers and private hire operators, which we refer to as the policy, and delegate to the licensing manager or an authorised officer to grant a special private hire vehicle licence tuk-tuk, subject to all usual checks, to Mr. Roger Walker for 12 months, with special conditions which can be found at Appendix 4 and approved by the subcommittee. Or 2, that the subcommittee depart from the policy and delegate to the licensing manager or an authorised officer to grant a special private hire vehicle licence tuk-tuk, again subject to the usual checks, to Mr. Roger Walker for 6 months, with special conditions which can be found at Appendix 4 and approved by the subcommittee. If after 6 months there are no concerns, the licence shall be extended for a further 6 months, 12 months in total, without any additional application or fee required. Or 3, that the subcommittee refuse the application to licence a tuk-tuk as a private hire vehicle. And in addition, 4, that the subcommittee grant in principle a special private hire driver's licence tuk-tuk with special conditions found at Appendix 5, approved by the subcommittee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just add, sorry, referring to an earlier question from Councillor Cunningham about the need for the private hire vehicle in the private hire vehicle tuk-tuk conditions in Appendix 4, page 23. We have referred to private hire vehicle within the conditions themselves, so I would suggest that that does need to stay. But as Daniel's referred to earlier, the private hire vehicle, the description there is a legal description of what is a private hire vehicle. So I don't think having it there impacts the fact that this is a vehicle that is different and that obviously wouldn't carry up to 9 passengers. I don't know, Ben,
Yeah, I
any
think,
comments on that?
Carol, I've anticipated where you were going with that. So I've gone from the Equalities Act, which we talked about,
Yeah.
2010, to the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act of 1976. And section 80 deals with interpretation of terms. Then their private hire vehicle means a motor vehicle constructed or adapted to seat fewer than 9 passengers. So this clearly would fit that definition because it's been adapted and will seat less than 9. That's the legal definition.
Right. We would now like to adjourn, make a decision. Everybody comfortable? Good. In reaching its decision, the subcommittee has carefully considered the evidence presented. Has taken into account the council's statement of licensing policy and the public sector equality, duty and rights set out in the Human Rights Act 1998. The subcommittee has departed from the statement of licensing policy with respect to the Hackney carriage and private hire of vehicles, drivers and private operators policy, and delegate a licensing manager or an authorised officer to grant a special private hire vehicle tuk-tuk licence subject to the usual checks to Mr. Roger Walker for 12 months, with special conditions attached as approved by the subcommittee. As an extra condition be added in the general condition section, being a new condition, condition 5, which shall limit and restrict the use of the private hire vehicle tuk-tuk to 2 fare-paying passengers, and authorise the officers to draft and attach that condition on the vehicle licence according subject to the checks being complete. The subcommittee are happy to grant in principle the special private hire driver's licence tuk-tuk with special conditions as per the agenda pack, subject to the usual checks. Right, yeah. You'll formally be notified of the decision in writing shortly. This notification will include details of the right to appeal against this decision to the Magistrates Court that must be made within 21 days of the notification.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hope it goes well for you.
Thank you.